He's Will Scott, host of Boston Celtics Today. I am your host, Harrison Graham, and more Celtics news and rumors circulating, Will, including Kevin Durant trade buzz. Could the C's get into the mix for Kevin Durant? We'll talk about that. More Malcolm Brogdon trade fallout as well, but tell the folks why they should subscribe to Celtics Today first.
Well, let me tell you, we're the fastest growing Boston Celtics channel on YouTube. Go down and subscribe. That's a sub link right there. YouTube.com/Celtics TV. And if you're a Boston Celtics fan, I can promise you you're in the right place. We're your one-stop shop for all Celtics news and rumors. We're going to be breaking it all down.
Yeah, Will's going to have you covered over there. Today, you got both of us. Mike Scotto just reporting this, Will. If Boston wants to make a run at Durant, the Celtics could theoretically try and entice the Nets with the package around Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart. So, Will, we were talking about hypothetical trade packages. This came through. I won't call it a full-blown report, but there's people in the know that are starting to say stuff like this. Could the C's get into the mix for KD?
Well, you hear that apparently Brooklyn isn't crazy about the packages that Phoenix has been offering, because Phoenix is obviously not going to trade Devin Booker. They just gave him the max, and Brooklyn really does not want Aiden centered around that deal. So a lot of people are saying that the Celtics with Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart might be able to offer the best package. Here is what Adam Himmelbach said about the Malcolm Brogdon trade. A team source stressed Friday Smart remains the Celtics' unquestioned starting point guard, and that the team was simply looking to add depth. Brogdon and Gallinari both have starting roles, but they're willing to step back. We'll talk about Brogdon a little bit later on. Here's what Sports Illustrated said about Durant to Boston. The Nets insist on Grant Williams. The Celtics have Gallinari, who joins a front court rotation of Robert Williams and Al Horford, and could include Thomas Bryant, the ex-Wizard center who has reportedly left Boston on his short list. So you have a situation now where the Celtics brought in Malcolm Brogdon. I said yesterday that I thought that might eliminate the C's from the KD sweepstakes. However, because they don't have a first-round pick next year, they might have to throw another player in this deal to make the Durant trade work. Here's what else SI said about Durant to Boston. Equally important, would Durant want to play in Boston? Durant has 4 years left on his contract, but no team is acquiring the ex-MVP without his blessing. The Celtics weren't on the initial list of teams leaked after the trade request, but Durant did grant Boston a free agency meeting in 2016. He has a strong relationship with Al Horford, who might have signed with OKC, not Boston, in 2016, had Durant committed to staying there. He was coached by Ime Udoka, a Nets assistant, during the 2020-2021 season. His business interests are in New York, perhaps incentivizing a Northeast location, and Durant wants to win. He can do that in Boston. So, Harry, we talked about this earlier. I've thrown together this mock trade, and boy, would this be a blockbuster and a half. So the Celtics would receive Kevin Durant, Seth Curry. Seth Curry could be kind of your sixth man behind Malcolm Brogdon as the backup point guard.
Sure.
Nets receive Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, Grant Williams, 2024, 2025, 2026 first-round picks, a 2027 pick swap. The Celtics have 3 second-round picks next year. They would give 2 to the Brooklyn Nets in this deal.
And look, I mean, it's going to take something like this, if not more, if you're going to get Kevin Durant. We've heard all the reports. If KD gets traded, it'll be the biggest trade in NBA history, because I don't think we've ever seen a player of this caliber get traded. Sure, James Harden's been traded. He ain't KD. Anthony Davis, he's not KD. LeBron's never been traded. So really the only other guy in the last 20 years that's even close to LeBron's caliber is Kevin Durant. If he gets dealt, it's going to take a haul and a half to do it. And quite frankly, and we'll give our thoughts on whether we would do a KD trade in just a moment. We'll let you guys weigh in first, though. Who says no to that trade? Type BOS for the Celtics, type BKN for the Nets. Pinned comment on today's video. Get your votes in down below.
I would say
I would do that trade, man.
I would do it too. I would do it if I were the Celtics, and I would very much consider it if I were the Nets. Now, if you're the Nets, you cannot afford to go into a full rebuild. Here is why. Because you don't have any of your own picks. So if you tank, you're not going to have any of your own picks.
Not a full tank.
Exactly. It's not a full tank. I think the Nets have to get a young star in return. They have the opportunity to do that by acquiring Jaylen Brown. But that trade that we just showed you still might be enough. It might take Robert Williams instead of Grant Williams to make that deal happen.
Yeah, I think if I'm the Celtics, I want Robert Williams too, a emerging young center in the NBA. And by the way, I still might do it if I'm Boston, because Kevin Durant and Jason Tatum as a duo, you may not have a better duo in the NBA. It would be that good. Now, some other moves in free agency. Obviously, Will, you've covered the Danilo Gallinari stuff pretty closely. 2 years, $13 million there, which, by the way, just I'll add my 2 cents. I think it's a great deal. I think as a six-man type, he can start as well, but if he's coming off your bench, giving you 15, 17 a game, I like that a lot. And then Luke Kornet back in the mix as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You bring Kornet back, someone who played for 3 different teams last season. Lastly, played for the Celtics, appeared in 12 games last year, averaged 2.2 points per game. So you bring him back, and I think it was important to bring him and Sam Hauser back because you traded your entire bench yesterday to get Brogdon. That was the back end of the bench, but I think it was important to kind of keep at least some role guys by bringing back Hauser and Kornet.
Yeah, you circle back to the Brogdon trade, and here were the full details, which, by the way, I hopped off, you hopped on when this trade went down yesterday during our free agency coverage on Chat Sports, and I got to tell you, yeah, you're giving up a first next year, but none of the other players you gave up have been key contributors. Daniel Tice a few years ago was. He's not anymore. Aaron Nesmith never lived up to that top 15 pick he was a couple of years ago, and the other guys are just throw-ins. I don't want to call it highway robbery, but I kind of do want to. Brogdon certainly has an injury history, but if he's healthy, there's no doubt about who won this trade.
Well, you know in fantasy football where you send a trade request and you try to rip your friend off by, trying to trade for their best player by sending your worst players, like 5 of your worst players to
and a flex option.
That is what Brad Stevens just did to the Indiana Pacers, sending the back end of the Celtics bench to Indiana and a first-round pick next year, but that first-round pick might be 30th overall if the C's win the finals.
Yeah, exactly. I think it was a great trade for Boston, and I think he's going to be a great fit. It'll be very fascinating to see how him and Marcus Smart fit in. And by the way, Adam Himmelbach on the Brogdon trade said this. We'll kind of circle back to this. Team source stressed Friday that Smart remains the Celtics' unquestioned starting point guard and that the team was simply looking to add depth. Brogdon and Gallinari both had starting roles, but they're willing to step back in order to pursue championships. And I'll give my thoughts real quick here, Will. If Brogdon and Gallinari are coming off your bench, that's a hell of a bench scoring tandem there, Will.
Right, but I think Brogdon should be the starting point guard because when you watch the Celtics last season, especially in the finals, they were kind of lacking a playmaking, scoring point guard. I think Smart might be better off at the 2 coming off the bench or, being the backup point guard. But Malcolm Brogdon should start. He is a very, very, very good point guard. He should be the starting point guard on this team. But I want y'all to let me know, who do you think should be the starting point guard for the Boston Celtics? Is it Malcolm Brogdon? If so, type MB. Or if it's Marcus Smart, type MS down in the comments section.
One more note here from Himmelbach. According to a league source, the Celtics are expected to agree with a multi-year deal with Sam Hauser when the dust clears in the coming days. Boston made that route pretty clear when it declined Hauser's team option for next year. So looks like they're going to add another deep role player here as well.
Yeah, and it was important to keep Hauser, especially trading a couple bench guys yesterday. Undrafted free agent out of Marquette last year. Most notably, he played at Virginia before transferring to Marquette, won a natty over there for UVA. 26 games played last season. He's a very good three-point shooter, impressed with a 43% mark there. So he's a guy you're going to be able to put at the 4, kind of have behind Gallinari, kind of maybe, I don't know if he's going to be in the rotation, but I think he's going to make this team and get some minutes. I like Hauser's potential. I think he's someone that can develop into a really good big man who can shoot off the bench. I'm very happy to see him back, as well as Luke Kornet back. Chris Haynes reported this yesterday. He has agreed to a 2-year deal to return to the C's. So you also have Luke Kornet coming back. Adam Kaufman pointed this out. You got Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, Rob Williams, Al Horford, Malcolm Brogdon, Derek White, Danilo Gallinari, Grant Williams, Peyton Pritchard, Sam Hauser, Luke Kornet. As of now, the C's have 3 open roster spots and 2 available two-way contracts to offer. What a job that Brad Stevens has done.
I mean, he's since taking over for Danny Ainge in that front office role, he's been tremendous. He goes a bit outside the box to hire Ime Udoka, a guy who hadn't been a head coach. I'd say that worked out pretty well. He committed to keeping Marcus Smart. I thought he had the best year of his career last year. He brought back Al Horford, which was critical for the title run as well, at least a trip to the finals. He's done a great job, and that's continued this offseason. Mark Murphy added this here as well, Will. Hearing that the Celtics still plan to sign a backup big to a vet minimum contract. No current plans for the trade exception there. A couple of options still out there that you're keeping an eye on.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a couple free agent centers still available. They've been linked to Thomas Bryant. Apparently, he's deciding between the Lakers and the C's. LaMarcus Aldridge, Aaron Baines, DeMarcus Cousins, and Hassan Whiteside all left. So they're probably going to have one of those guys agree to the vet minimum.
I would like Whiteside because
he
can protect the rim probably better than any of those other options. All right, we'll end on this. Name a free agent center that the Celtics should sign. I'll throw another name. He's a bit of a 4-5. Serge Ibaka could be a guy they look at as well. If you had to pick one, Will, who do you want?
Thomas Bryant. I don't know how realistic that is with the current cap situation, but he's the guy that I want on the C's.
Let us know in the comments.